We all know that image, right? Katie Ledecky just gliding through the water looking like she's powered by some, I don't know, some hidden nuclear reactor.
Oh, absolutely. She's 30 meters ahead of everyone. You see the speed, you see the medals, and you just think it's inevitable.
It is. But if you only look at that finish line, you are missing the most important part of the story. And that story starts long, long before the race.
That's so true. The world sees the victory lap, but what we analyzed in the source material for this deep dive, it shows this constant internal struggle.
Oh, struggle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every single stroke she takes in training, especially in those just brutal, monotonous sessions, it's a negotiation.
A negotiation with herself.
Completely. It's the brain, hardwired to save energy, just begging the body to stop. And then there's her will, her trained will, demanding it never, ever stops.
And that conflict right there, that negotiation, that's the whole tension we're going to explore today. It really brings up the core question of all elite performance, doesn't it?
It does.
I mean, what kind of person wakes up year after year in the dark, in the cold, to swim the exact same lap when absolutely no one is watching? How do you find fuel for that?
See, that's not really a motivational question. It's a neurological one. What Ledecky is doing every day isn't just physical endurance.
It's something more.
It's what one of the analytical scripts we looked at calls neurological warfare against biology. Our brains, yours and mine, they're designed to seek out new things, to find change, to save energy.
Survival instincts.
Exactly. And her entire career is built on actively, consciously rejecting those natural urges.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Our mission for this deep dive is to really decode how the world's most consistent athletes don't just put up with boredom, but they hack it.
Right. How do they train their emotions? How do they build this mental resilience circuit that goes so far beyond just talent or, feeling motivated one day?
So we're looking at a narrative analysis of her high-performance psychology.
We are. And it really lays out how she transformed monotony, the one thing that kills almost everyone's potential, into her single greatest weapon.
To really get this, to appreciate the mental fight, we have to understand the scale of what we're talking about. Let's start with what we're calling the monotony paradox.
The numbers are just staggering.
Try to picture this reality for a second. She logs over 30,000 identical motions every single week.
And it's the same pool, the same, that burning smell of chlorine, that awful, jarring 4 a.m. alarm clock.
Ugh, I can't even imagine. And that's usually before she's even recovered from the day before.
And this isn't just for a single season or like an Olympic push. This has been her life for 15 straight years.
15 years. If you put that into any other context, like reading the same 3 pages of a report every day for 15 years.
You'd quit. I mean, most of us would just spontaneously quit from the sheer mental degradation of it.
And yet, here's the paradox that just flips the entire script. When she's asked about this brutal routine, Ledecky doesn't say it's soul-crushing. She doesn't say it's draining.
What does she say?
She calls it comforting.
Comforting. Wow.
Comforting. That's a fundamentally different relationship with routine than almost anyone has.
That one word, comforting, that's the gateway to understanding her entire advantage. To unpack it, we have to look at the neuroscience.
Okay.
Our brains are just relentlessly wired for dopamine hits. And we get those from novelty. Dopamine is the molecule that pushes us to explore, to try new things, to move forward.
But the path to mastery, especially in a sport like hers, it has zero novelty left. Every day looks the same. So that external dopamine signal it falls off a cliff.
Right. And my brain, your brain, would win that argument immediately. It would scream, I need a coffee, a new project, maybe just 5 more minutes of sleep.
Anything but this.
And that's where most people break. The brain wins, the habit collapses. But for Ledecky, that routine, starting in the cold and the dark, that's where her engine starts.
So she's not relying on motivation, which is just an emotion that comes and goes.
Not at all. She relies on a system, a discipline so deep that the routine itself becomes the only safe place to be.
So how does she do that? How does the brain, which is built to love novelty, suddenly find comfort in doing the same thing over and over?
Well, that gets us to the actual neurological hack. It's about shifting from the physical grind to the mental rewiring. It's process over reward.
And this is where the research into elite performers gets really, really fascinating.
It does. Researchers found something totally counterintuitive.
Yeah.
The brain wiring of true elites often doesn't spike dopamine after the reward. So not after the medal or the victory party.
Okay, so when does it spike?
Their pleasure centers spiked much more intensely during the repetition itself. during the process.
So they've unconsciously engineered their own pleasure circuits.
Exactly. Instead of focusing on that distant external goal, they've somehow created these immediate internal rewards that are tied to perfect execution.
Is that why when you see her on camera, she often looks almost detached? She's not thinking about the outcome, she's still in the mechanism.
Precisely. That is the proof point.
Yeah.
And she confirmed it herself. She said, quote, "I focus on the walls, the strokes, the turns. The rest takes care of itself."
She is actively steering her attention away from the huge, scary goal winning the Olympics and just laser focusing it on the microscopic details of right now.
It's a radical form of cognitive control.
But is there a risk there? That by focusing only on the, the granular details of the lap, she loses sight of the bigger ambition that got her there in the first place.
That's the subtlety of it. The big goal, the ambition, that's the context. But the repetition, that's the text.
Okay.
By pouring all her attention into those details, the angle of her hand entry, the timing of her breath, that attention acts as a filter and filters out the pain and the boredom.
So if you're truly operating at the absolute edge of perfect execution, you just don't have the spare mental capacity to register your aching shoulders.
Or the soul-crushing lack of variety. The repetition itself becomes the source of these little micro-novelties.
And that brings us to that Harvard research we looked at, which gives us a broader context. They suggest that boredom isn't caused by a lack of activity, it's a lack of meaning.
Exactly. If Ledecky was just swimming laps to burn calories, she'd quit in a week. That would be meaningless activity.
But for her, the meaning is self-contained.
The act of mastery itself, the pursuit of a perfect, optimized, repeatable motion, that is the goal. This is why she burns deeper into the work instead of burning out from it.
That level of self-control makes her sound like a machine, a perfectly disciplined machine. But even the best machines can run into friction.
And that sets up the major crisis moment for her, back in 2019.
Right, at the World Championships. For years, she had been basically untouchable. She was the one athlete everyone just knew would win.
And suddenly, the machine sputtered. She lost several races. She looked slow, exhausted. She looked human.
And the full truth, which only came out later, was that she was really sick. She was fighting a high fever.
But the world didn't know that. All the public saw was failure. For someone whose entire identity is built on consistency, that external signal must have been terrifying.
The discipline bubble was cracked.
And the foundation of her identity was threatened. Now, when that kind of setback hits a high performer, the typical response is panic. It's to push harder, grit your teeth, and try to force the old results.
Brute force, just prove the machine still works.
But Ledecky's response, according to the analysis of her career, was profoundly different. And it's the key revelation about her whole mental architecture.
She didn't just train harder?
No, she returned to the basics. Specifically, she said, to feel normal again.
And she described that recovery process with a key phrase, didn't she?
She did. She called it rediscovering the love of small improvements. Just think about the weight of that phrase.
She wasn't scrambling to chase the medals she'd just lost.
No, the external validation. She was actively rebuilding the internal scaffolding of progress. She chose her internal world when the external one had just collapsed around her.
And that right there is what separates the great from the truly legendary, isn't it?
It is. When the success is stripped away, their identity is still tied to the execution and the process, not the outcome.
It proves her foundation was always about internal progress, not external prizes.
Right. It speaks to the integrity of her whole system. If her success were only tied to winning, that 2019 failure would have been a psychological collapse. Instead, she used it as a diagnostic.
So let's revisit this monotony paradox now with this deeper understanding. How does someone keep manufacturing meaning from what looks to all of us on the outside like just mind-numbing micro-variation?
Her practice is only boring if you view it casually. Internally, every single lap is packed with hidden complexity. It's a data collection exercise.
So she's constantly assessing.
Constantly. Is the split timing off by 1/10 of a second? Did I miss the breathing angle on that last turn? What's the tension in my lat muscle? She is actively seeking depth, where the rest of us would only see dullness.
This sounds exactly like what sports psychologists call deep practice. But let's clarify that for everyone listening. It's more than just practicing a lot, right?
Oh, much more. Deep practice means operating right at the edge of your ability. The task is familiar, but you're pushing it just enough that it remains slightly unstable.
Forcing the brain to build new, more efficient neural pathways.
That's it. And Ledecky lives in that efficient, slightly unstable zone every single day. She never settles into cruise control.
But there's an immense pressure that comes with that level of success, the isolation of excellence. When you win all the time, every performance is either perfection or it's a catastrophic failure.
And that pressure usually annihilates joy. It just breeds crippling anxiety.
Which is where we see her elite cognitive control really shine. She uses this incredibly powerful cognitive trick. She instantly reframes anxiety. She turns that immense pressure, which would paralyze most people, into a sense of privilege.
So her internal dialogue just shifts from what if I fail to what?
To pressure means I'm trusted to perform. It's an interpretation choice, not an emotional reaction.
That is the hallmark of supreme cognitive control. It's the ability to choose your interpretation of the moment, regardless of the chaos. It's what Navy SEALs use, what surgeons use.
And her identity reset after that 2019 crisis really affirmed this. Her sense of self isn't tied to winning the race. It's tied to doing the right thing, the right way, when nobody's watching.
And that is the source of her terrifying consistency. Which brings us to the climax, really. Let's see all this in action at the Tokyo 2021 Olympics.
Okay, the tension going into that race was electric. She's facing all this young, formidable competition. The race starts, and for the first 400 meters, half the race, she is behind.
Externally, the commentators are panicking. The myth of her invincibility looks like it might finally be ending.
If she were motivated by the external outcome, that's when panic would set in. She'd rush her stroke, waste energy, push into the red zone.
But inside, according to the reports, everything is quiet. There is no focus on catching up. She is focused only on the next stroke, the rhythm, the process.
Her mental training just takes over. She trusts the consistency she built at 4 a.m. for all those years.
And then the shift happens. And it's not some explosive burst you'd see in a sprint. It's quiet, relentless. It feels inevitable.
The lead grows because she has sustained this perfect, optimized rhythm that her competitors just cannot match. By the last lap, she's not even racing them anymore.
She's racing the clock. She's racing the standards she perfected over thousands and thousands of hours of boredom.
She touches the wall, looks up, and there's just that quiet nod. The victory isn't a celebration of a medal. It's the quiet affirmation of mastery.
That quiet nod is the ultimate takeaway for all of us, isn't it? No matter what our field is. When you train your brain to thrive on discipline, winning stops being this big external event you have to strive for.
It just becomes the environment that you carry around with you. So, what does this all mean for you? You might be a creator staring at a blank page, a business person, a student, feeling that mental drag. We look at champions like Ledecky and we think, oh, they're just built differently.
But the truth is, they build themselves differently. Her advantage isn't magical genetics. It's unparalleled consistency. Her secret isn't motivation. It's deep, self-contained meaning.
Her real victory is over that internal resistance, over boredom, long before she ever faces an opponent.
And that lesson transfers to any field that requires sustained, detailed effort. Maybe you're not diving into a cold pool. Maybe you're staring at a huge spreadsheet or trying to debug some code.
That feeling of monotony is not an enemy to be avoided.
No. If you feel trapped in that repetition, remember her approach. Monotony is not the enemy of excellence. It's the environment where excellence is born. The repetition you hate is precisely where your edge is hiding.
She didn't wait for inspiration to overcome boredom. She found the micro-variation inside the repetition and built her strength right there.
It fundamentally changes how we should think about hard work.
So the next time you feel that resistance, that desperate craving for something new, ask yourself the question that defines the difference between good and great. Are you waiting for dopamine to show up and pull you forward? Or are you actively building that pleasure circuit yourself?
Because greatness isn't a spark you wait for. It's a circuit you have to wire. And if you wire it right, boredom becomes the most formidable power you possess.